The content shared on the Brain Scrub podcast is for entertainment, personal reflection, and general information only. The views expressed by the host and guest are based on personal experiences and opinions and may not reflect scientific research or professional advice. This podcast is not a substitute for medical, psychological, or therapeutic guidance. If you are seeking support for your mental health or well-being, please consult a qualified professional. By listening, you acknowledge that any actions you take based on the ideas discussed are your own responsibility. Hello, welcome to the Brain Scrub. My name is Glenn Sollers. I'm your host, and you know what? I'm so happy to announce that I now have a co-host, a good friend of mine who I've known for 21 years. He's been on the show before. We're talking about kids and neurodivergence and different things. Jeff Goreski's in the house with me, and he and I are going to begin co-hosting this podcast. And my intention is to add an element of humor into it because Jeff, he always makes me laugh. In fact, when I first met him, we were in a men's group and we had to do these circles. And every time he looked at me, I couldn't stop laughing and he couldn't stop laughing at me. So I think we've had a great connection ever since then. So Jeff, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello. Oh, is my mic on?
Yeah, you're on.
A lot of technology. Thank you, Glenn. It's a pleasure being here. I have known Glenn for, I guess it's been about 20 years now. It'll be 20 years.
Yeah, it was 2006 that we did our initiation at the MKP weekend. I did my initiation. You were staffing it, and
yeah. I still remember that young, innocent-looking face going into the weekend.
And now I'm old and I don't have a lot of wrinkles, but you have some wrinkles going on there. We both have grays going on too. Like we're a bit older now.
Yeah, well, that's only natural. Boy. So thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you accepting, and I want to take this podcast to the next level, and I have over 100 episodes, and it's kind of lonely. And I realize that I do a lot of things alone, and I want to build connection and community. And I figured there's no better person to do that with than you, because we are both very similar, which could be a bit of a challenge. You and I are both ENFPs, right? In Myers-Briggs. Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And I know this is something I've been struggling with too, which is why I agreed to do this podcast with you, because otherwise, why would I want to spend this much time with you? But
we spend hours talking about your issues on the phone sometimes.
Totally.
And my issues too. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I think a lot of men, especially in our age group, are struggling with loneliness right now because for a lot of men, our social networks tend to get smaller as we get older. Men tend to have their friendships more through their workplace than women. So I think as we start exiting the workforce, we struggle with maintaining those social connections. And I know that's something I've experienced recently, having been through a couple of job transitions over the last few years. And also because I work fully remotely, it's a challenge to feel connected to my immediate community around me where I live. And so, having those day-to-day interactions, we don't realize it, I think, as human beings, but those little small daily interactions are probably more important to us than we recognize. It's not necessarily having always, quality time with your best friends and talking about deep subjects and things like that. Like I know you like to. But,
oh yeah, no, it drives people nuts.
No, totally. But do we have to talk about this shit all the time? Come on.
Yeah.
But seriously, I mean, that's important too. But what I'm saying is, what's just as important is those small interactions at the coffee shop when we're getting our coffee, or, picking up, our children at their activities and things like that. Those small daily interactions with other human beings are so critical to our well-being. And a lot of people don't realize this, but the three biggest social determinants of health. So the first two are income and education, but next to that, social support is one of the social determinants of health that has the greatest impact on our overall quality of life and health and well-being. And a lot of people don't realize that because it's not talked about a lot. You think, to be healthy, I just need to exercise and, get lots of sleep and things like that. But we are human beings, and that social connection is so critical to our mental health and just overall well-being.
You said income and education are the top ones.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a
Absolutely.
determinant of health, income and education. I thought
Yeah.
social connection would be above that.
So social determinants of health. Social support is definitely up there. It's probably the third biggest factor. But income and education influences our quality of life and our overall life expectancy. And that's pretty much across the board, just because for many reasons, right? Obviously, the more money you make, the more education you have, the better choices you can make, the more opportunities you have, right? Things like that. So those actually influence our health in terms of social factors more than anything else. But then you have social support, because you can have all the money in the world and whatnot, but as you know and I do, if you're experiencing loneliness and not connecting, that has an impact on our mental well-being, because we're social beings. We're not meant to be alone, right?
Yeah.
I sit at home a lot in my room, like I am right now, talking to myself or looking at my computer. Yeah, I get to see people virtually. I don't find virtual connections the same though, as that in person, because you can't always pick up that a person's body language or some of those nuances that you can in person. There's a separation, even though it's really cool. I can see you and we can talk through this, virtual medium. It's not the same experience, in my opinion, from my experience.
Yeah. And just so you know, that Jeff is in a different city than I am. So he's connected via Zoom call here. That really connects also with the whole blue zone thing, how there's people that live over 100. But I was watching a documentary once and they're just talking about this blue zone, and everybody thinks, is it the food they eat? Is it their environment? Is it the fact that they have sunshine? But it comes down to these people just live in a community, and they chat every day, and they have a coffee, and they sit outside. There was an episode I saw on this farm in Cuba where there were these guys in their 90s, and they would farm together every single day, and that was their life. And they had that camaraderie, they had fun, they were sharing stories, they were living for something. Yeah. So here we are, you and I.
Yeah, exactly. And like a lot of men, we don't get those opportunities anymore. We become, obviously we're no longer an agrarian society. We're very much we could even call it a post-technological society.
Ooh, those are big words for this show.
I know, too big. I don't even know what they mean, but I might have just made that up. I'm not really sure.
When you say aggregate, that just means agricultural based society, I'm assuming. Okay.
Yeah,
thanks. These are new words for me. Thank you.
When we worked in the fields together, men and boys, we would raise our boys together. We would build barns together and sow our crops together and till the earth together. And during that time, when we were doing these things together, we would talk, right? We would support you. We'd listen to each other's struggles, and so many men now are still not doing that. We don't talk about our struggles or challenges. I just went back to Ontario actually, and I hadn't seen a lot of my good friends for probably 20 years. And one of my friends, he mentioned some struggles in his marriage, and I was almost shocked because I always saw him as someone who is in a very happy marriage. And I felt sad because him and I hadn't really talked, in that way for so long. Mm-hmm. And look, the funny thing is most men and women for that matter, we all struggle in our marriages or relationships. I think men often ruminate in their head and we think we're alone, right? But as soon as we share it and someone else goes, yeah, I get it. It's like that. Oh, it's such a relief to know that you're not the only one going insane, right? As I could say, I find, there's so much value in hearing other people's struggles. For one reason, obviously, it sometimes helps you deal with your own struggles. But sometimes it also helps you go, well, yeah, like I'm not the only one here. And there's that empathy, because let's face it, when you're talking with your partner, they don't always understand you. But what I find in listening to other men's stories, I understand them because I'm experiencing those same feelings, right? And those same thoughts. And I can empathize with them. And then knowing that, I can also share my stuff. And I get that same feeling from them, like they get it. and they understand it. And I get that empathy back, which is so important to the human soul, right? And we don't always get that from our partners because, let's face it, if we're in a heterosexual relationship, they don't necessarily understand what a man's going through because they're not a man. So
Yeah.
it's a very different type of relationship. And, I believe that friendship is very much the highest form of any relationship, because if you think about it, we don't expect anything from a friend other than being a friend.
Yeah.
There's no economic ties, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no, I don't want to say emotional ties. There are emotional ties in some way, but it's a very different type of tie, I think, from obviously our primary relationship with our partner. And there's no responsibilities associated with being a friend other than just to enjoy each other's friendship and have fun and be who we are together and be silly and laugh, right? So I think for so long, through the industrial, time of our society, men have struggled because we've been taught to compete in the workplace. We've been pulled out of our communities, right? We went off to the cities initially, and we were pulled out of our communities, and we sent the money back to our homes so our women and children could survive. This was back in beginning of the Industrial Revolution. But then we kept just isolating ourselves further and further, because again, the workplace in our capitalist societies have taught us to compete with each other and not trust each other. So a lot of distrust, I think, has grown between men over the last 100 or so years because we don't have those common day-to-day interactions where we're working together towards a common goal, right? If you think about it, a lot of times we're just competing against each other, against competing, people in the same industry as us and that sort of thing, or competing on this corporate ladder where we're trying to achieve. And we're always trying to be the best person with the best ideas. And it's become a very competitive world, I think. Now, do I think things are changing? I think so. I think men are becoming more aware that there's more to life than the workplace and that we need each other. And there's definitely been a bigger push towards supporting men and their health and well-being, especially their mental health. I'm sure you've seen a lot of news recently around men's health and awareness, and how a lot of men, I've been reading that a lot these days, a lot of men are struggling with loneliness and isolation, and how important it is for men's mental health to connect with other men, to have a purpose, to be doing something together, to feel productive, to feel valued, and to have those times together where we can just talk.
You raise a lot of good points. When you think about some of the animal species out there, the male tries to woo the female as well, right? You're trying to outcompete other males so you can have sex with this female. So it's in the animal kingdom. But yeah, it's what amazes me is I find, especially over the age of 50 now, that there's a lot of men that don't go out there and seek that relationship or companionship or are able to have these open and honest dialogues. I think men generally have a shield up. I think you and I have lowered our guards because of the fact that we went through this training and we still do self-awareness work. We started like 25 years ago or whatever it was. And so we've learned to create that connection, but a lot of men haven't gone through that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, because we're not conditioned to. And so, and that's what I find sometimes when I go back to, like when I went back to Ontario, even I struggled in some ways to connect, because I never necessarily related to those friends like I relate to you, because I did the work after I left Ontario.
Yeah.
So I don't have that common experience with them of sharing those deeper, intimate details about myself and my life and my relationships with them. So I even noticed, like, I was struggling to be fully open and honest in moments, right? Because I don't have that trust built with them. So I can see how it's difficult for men who've never been through that type of work to just open up and feel safe. And having facilitated men's groups for 20 years, I totally understand. Doesn't make it any less challenging in the moment, right? Like we can do all the work we can in the world, but if you don't have that foundation of trust with those other men, you're putting yourself out there, and there's that risk, there's that fear of being shamed or judged or whatever it might be. And I think that's what prevents a lot of men from opening up, right?
Well, it ties back to what you were saying around being competitive with each other. So
Yeah.
we're trying to outperform, I guess, in a way, unconsciously that shows up. So maybe we're not willing to be vulnerable because then that's going to put us in a lower position. Could that be possible?
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great insight for sure, because if we all of a sudden are vulnerable, then what are those other men going to think about us in our lives, right? And it's almost like we're hiding ourselves to maintain some sort of respect from those other men in our life. But what's ironic is I actually end up respecting men more when they're authentic and real and honest with me, right?
Yeah.
So it's like I finally get exposed to the real person, as opposed to this facade that we've created, that we're strong and we'll, get through things on our own and life is fine. The word fine everybody uses, I'm fine, or I'm good, right? I mean, how often do you hear men say that? I'm fine, I'm good. Really, are you? Because lots of stuff,
there's a lot of shit going on. Yeah.
There's a lot of shit going on in the world, in our community, everywhere, and everyone's fine. We all have to deal with financial issues, relationship issues, climate change, like global issues, things like that. Not everyone's fine.
Yeah.
Right. We know that. And so when I hear a man saying fine or good, I know that's not entirely true. Yes, in the moment we might feel fine or good, and that's totally, acceptable, but it doesn't take long to peel off the layers of the onion.
Exactly. And I guess in a way we're kind of jockeying for power position.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
To show that we are good, that we are not healthy, but that we got
that
it.
Somehow,
but
somehow my life is better than your life, that I've got it figured out, right? That I got it figured out. Oh, I'm sorry you don't, and you're having problems. I got it figured out, so I'm fine, I'm good.
Yeah, and there's so much freedom for me. And I don't know if you've seen my development or growth. I've seen your development and growth, and I've also seen
I'm
both
still
of us.
waiting for you to grow.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'm still waiting for you to grow up. Okay. I forget what I was just about to say. I think this is a sign of age. I have more trains coming in and out of the station now. Maybe that's just my personality. Can't manage all that traffic coming in and out. I know I was going to ask the question, but I completely forgot what I was going to ask.
The train has left the station.
The train's going to come back in a moment. I can feel it's coming back.
I don't even know.
Oh no! Here is what I was going to say. Okay, so I don't know if you've noticed this about yourself, but for me, being open, vulnerable, and honest has made me feel more at ease with who I am and who I'm not, and more open and honest. And when I'm in situations, especially in social situations, like I'm going to a birthday party this afternoon, and I find I struggle in those situations because I just see all these people in front of me that do not have the level of self-awareness necessarily that you and I do. And I find that very difficult to connect with at times. And I don't feel like myself. And that's a whole other piece of work for me, is just letting go and being, and not worrying about the power I may or may not perceive that I have in front of these individuals. But it's funny how sometimes self-awareness for me has led to disconnection, because I can't, and I don't want to talk about the hockey game or the latest score in this or that. And sometimes, or like engines or some of these typical guy types of things.
Yeah. I hear you, but here's the thing, and this is what I find, that very judgment actually prevents you from connecting. So that's your own projection, that's your own shadow. So our level of self-awareness, we're not more self-aware than any of those guys. Yeah. We just choose to practice, and use tools, right? But they're just as self-aware as we are. We just have done maybe more of the work to be able to express ourselves in that way. But the self-awareness is the same. We're all one, right? So even that judgment of, well, I'm at a different level of self-awareness is actually what's preventing us. That's just the ego coming up with the reason not to connect with those other people. We're already judging them and saying, well, they're lesser than us. right?
I
Because
no,
they
I
haven't
wouldn't.
done,
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that. That's
haven't done
not.
the work.
Yeah, but that's not how I look at it. I look at it sometimes I feel lesser than them because I can't partake in those conversations.
Oh, so
So
you
yeah, so
feel the
it's not
opposite.
not an ego thing. It's more of a geez, I wish I wasn't so self-aware and I wish I could just talk about these things and I wish I could be this type of man that follows this kind of stuff, but that's just not in my nature. And that makes me feel
Or,
lesser than, and I think
right.
that's actually that's a really good point. That's probably what's keeping me feeling little in those situations
Yeah,
or
exactly. Because
lesser
it's still
than.
a judgment. It's still a judgment, right?
Yeah.
It's just the opposite, right? Where you're
Mhm.
feeling that an inferiority instead of a superiority complex. It's the same. It's the same mechanism, though. We're judging the other man to be lesser or greater, lesser than or greater than us in terms of our level of self awareness. And who's to say talking about sports or an engine or whatever is out of our league, right? Like we
Yeah.
can just look. I know, I get it. Some guys, when they talk to me about that stuff, I don't understand half the things they're saying, but I can just listen and be present with them because they're relating to me where they're coming from. And that's okay, right? Because they're sharing something of themselves that's important to them with me. I don't have to understand, their deepest, most inner secrets or feelings about life or relationships or anything. But what I will say is sometimes those topics can lead to deeper things, right? And so if we don't listen to those things, and again, I think, and I don't know, maybe I was there, maybe I wasn't, but when we were an agricultural society, I think that's how those topics came up. We're sitting there talking with our buddies, our friends, our community. When we're planting, we're putting the seeds in the soil, things like that, or hammering on a wooden plank to build a
Mhm.
barn, things like that. We're talking about real things in life, like, hey, we got to fix this because of this and blah blah blah. And the next thing you know, we're getting into those deeper conversations because it happens organically, right? Because we're just human beings and we're going to, especially men, I think we talk about the concrete things first because they're the easiest,
Yeah.
because we can fix those concrete things because men are problem solvers, right? And that's what we want to do.
Yeah.
But I think and I think this is why there's an organization in Canada called Men's Shed. I think this is why their model works so well, is because men come together to do something. So Men's Shed's all about creating social connection for men, but they have a purpose. They often build things together
Mhm.
and do things in the community, like build a tool shed or something like that. So they actually work towards a common purpose. But in that common purpose, we're working together and naturally developing those social relationships. Because how do we build trust with other men but through those real experiences? Wow, I build a shed with Bill. I really trust Bill. Oh, guess what? The next time I talk with Bill and have a coffee with him, yeah, I might talk a bit about my family life with him, because it's men have it. I think that men develop trust through different mechanisms than women potentially, right? Like, so I do feel that when we work together as men, that's how we develop trust, because we can see other men are competent in certain areas, and we develop those relationships through those common purposes, whether it's building a barn or whatever it is, so that naturally or organically our conversations evolve into deeper things and more meaningful connections, because it's through those common experiences that we develop those relationships.
Yeah, and for you and I, we've never built anything together other than building ourselves. And I think that's exactly it as well. What you're saying is that our common language was our mankind project language and self-awareness language and all these different things. And we built trust through that. And now we can
Yeah.
share everything with each other about what's going on and get feedback and hear different perspectives. I want to go back for a moment and just talk about, so when you're in conversations with people that are talking about stuff that you're not interested in, and for you, I find for me that sometimes I don't listen and I'm
Mm-hmm.
just thinking about other things. So I'm not actually in the conversation. Do you do that at all? Or are you able to
Oh,
actually listen?
it's happening to me right now. Uh, yeah, no, it happens to me a lot. Absolutely. I mean, it's only human, right? Because we're distracted by so many other things in our life. We don't necessarily listen to other people, what they're saying or expressing, I think that also becomes more difficult when we don't necessarily understand the topic of their conversation or something that interests us, right? Like that doesn't inspire us. So if, for you and I sitting around talking about cars and the engines and all that, that doesn't really inspire us. So
Yeah.
It's harder to really stay focused on that when perhaps we're also thinking, well, I have to do this today, or how am I really like, there could be a million other thoughts going through our head for a million other reasons. So it does take a lot more focus, I believe, and clarity to be able to focus on someone who's expressing something that we may not be interested in, or we just don't even understand at all.
Yeah, and this ties back, I guess, to being competitive or being in a power position where we had to prove ourselves. So I just had a light bulb moment here that maybe I just need to be willing to give up that power and give up that control and say, I'm going to give it to you. Like, I'm going to let you feel this way, and I'm not going to take it in any sort of negative way. You take the stage. I'm just going to watch to see what unfolds. I'm going to engage in the conversation and actively listen to you. And that's a power position to be in, is to be in the presence of somebody else who's exhibiting their power. And as a fellow man, to be willing to say, you know what? It's all yours. And I'm here to listen, versus trying to figure out, oh my gosh, what do I respond to this? How can I add my element of power here? And how can I show that, I get it and I understand? Because that's what I find I do sometimes, Jeff, is I try to come up with solutions in my head and I want to be part of the problem solving, but I can't because I don't understand what they're talking about. But to actually be okay with that and
say, as men, we've been taught that our self-worth is tied to our value, right? To what we can offer. To our product. So if we can't offer something, men struggle with, you're right. It's great to see men in their power who are offering their expertise, whatever that might be, if it's in engines or farming or whatever. But if it's not our expertise, it almost makes us feel useless.
Yeah.
And if we feel useless, then who are we if we can't contribute to something? So, but absolutely. I remember when I was a kid, I would go over to my friend's place, and him and his dad, they were like very mechanical. And I would just go over, they would fix everything from cars to lawnmowers to you name it. And he was always fixing a lawnmower. He was obsessed with lawnmowers. I don't know why, but I would just go over there and hang out, and I would listen to him, and I would watch him and his dad talk about stuff, and he would show me different things. And I had no interest in it whatsoever, but I was fascinated by the fact that he was so intrigued by the mechanics of a lawnmower or cars in general, and how. And what I found amazing was the connection it brought between him and his dad. And I remember it wasn't too long ago, I can't remember, 10 years ago or whatever, but his dad passed away. And my friend, he was really sad because he grew up with his dad in his garage fixing these lawnmowers and cars together, because that's what they did together. His dad was a science teacher, a really intelligent guy. And so was my friend, for that matter. It's like, and they just had that strong connection together and a shared hobby or interest that inspired them both. And I just loved being around it. And that was a gift to me. I didn't realize it then, but I just liked going over there because I'm like, oh, they'll be working in their garage on something. It'll be a lawnmower or a car or some other mechanical thing. And I'm just going to hang around and talk and absorb what I can. I still don't understand any of it, but being around it was just a lot of fun as a kid growing up. Gave me something to do, but more importantly, I got to see, witness this connection between him and his father and their passion for these type of things like lawnmowers and cars. Like, who would have been so fascinated with lawnmowers? But he would do different things. He would soup them up and all this stuff. It was quite funny, but he just loved it. He thought it was the cat's ass. I think you're right, though. It does create that dynamic of men feeling lesser than, and if they feel lesser than, they have nothing to contribute, then they feel useless. I know I feel that sometimes. And that's something that's, I think, really difficult for older men. And I know, I've been seeing a psychologist recently because I'm working through some of my own stuff right now. I'm trying to, I think, reconcile time, right, around just the fact that I have less time ahead of me than behind me now, right. And I think it's really nice to be able to share. And he's an older man, the psychologist, and I really like that because I've missed that connection for the last few years where I live, and just connecting with older men and having sort of a wiser older man to sort of give me some suggestions or thoughts or insights into what I'm going through. I forgot what I was going to say. Darn it. I lost my train of thought too.
Oh, so yeah, just so our audience knows, we're both over 50, and I think we're aging.
Yeah.
In some ways. Okay. Yeah. So, train's back in the station, Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah. Train's back in the station. So what I was going to get to is, I think a lot of men too, in their 50s, and maybe this is the case for women too, I don't know, but our culture values youth so much and knowledge. And I think we've forgotten the wisdom that older people bring, right? And it's kind of sad, because as someone who the last couple of years I've gone through, a couple of different transitions with work and whatnot, and it's a lot more challenging to be out of work when you're in your 50s than it is when you're in your 30s, let's say, or 20s, even 20s, 30s, even 40s, because at some level, there's still kind of a bit of an ageist kind of mentality in our workplaces. Older workers, I think, struggle more finding work than younger workers, because we've become such a knowledge-based society. And so older workers, they don't have the biggest, newest, latest ideas all the time and knowledge, because we went to school 20 years ago, but we have the wisdom and life experience to contribute. And what my psychologist said is, and I agree with them, because it kind of makes sense, is that while younger workers don't have the experience, they have all the knowledge, they have the energy too. We don't have the same amount of energy we used to. It's just aging, right? I know I recently, I've been working out a lot and whatnot, and I finally realized, why am I pushing myself so hard? I don't need to do this anymore. Mm-hmm. And I started cutting back on my workouts. I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to work out. I love it, but I don't need to go so hard anymore. I'm healthy. I'm well. I'm just going to maintain what I have, but I don't have to push myself so hard. That's for younger people. They can do that.
Sorry to interrupt, but just want to stop you there for a moment. But it's also important in our age to actually build muscle capacity and to focus on that development, right? Because we need it for our joints. Okay, sorry. And go ahead.
Strengthen what we have.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. But don't push ourselves beyond what we need, because we don't need as much as, say, young. We don't have the capacity to grow muscle as well as a younger person, right? We just don't. We don't have the same metabolism and everything else. Our bodies are aging. They're naturally starting to break down more. It's about strengthening what we have, because I think it actually taxes our system and does us more of a detriment if we push ourselves too hard at this age. I think our bodies naturally want to relax. So basically, again, what he said was, younger people have the knowledge. They're fresh out of school. They have the new ideas, the energy. Older people, we don't have the latest knowledge. Our knowledge is outdated, right? Knowledge exponentially has been, it used to be that, knowledge would turn itself over every, let's say, 7 years. And now you're lucky if it's 7 months, right? Because the way knowledge is speeding up in terms of how we produce it, it's exponentially growing, right? So it's like the new knowledge is coming out faster and faster these days because of technology and AI and everything else. And so it's hard to keep up with knowledge. But essentially, like what he was saying, the way older workers can stay relevant is don't rely on solely their life experience, which is what I think a lot of us do, right? We don't necessarily go back to school. We're like, we're too old to go back to school. And at the end of the day, are we going to go back to school when we're 55 for the next 5-10 years? No. Why would we, right? Maybe we might go back for a year or something, because there could be value in that, but we're not going to go back and do a full PhD probably at this point in our lives, most of us. But the best thing we can do is try to stay relevant with the latest knowledge, so that we can bring both the wisdom and the life experience of having worked in the workplace for 30 years at this point or whatever, and some of the recent knowledge, and that how older and younger generations have a lot to learn from each other. Where younger generations can bring the new ideas from the latest knowledge, but then the older workers can actually help apply them in the real world, because new ideas and new knowledge don't always translate into the real world in terms of application, right? We can have all this knowledge, but we have to know how to apply it. And there's nuances, as I'm sure you've learned throughout your career, of how you do implement a new idea.
Yes.
Whatever it might be, because there's the new idea and then there's reality of actually how it's going to get rolled out.
Yeah, and the younger generation definitely wants to be involved in improving this world that we live in. They want to be engaged in creating the vision of the organization and providing their ideas. And I have to say, though, it depends on the career. Like, if I consider me as a facilitator, I've been doing it for, I don't know, 18, 20 years, where I'm standing in front of groups and I'm engaging them and I'm getting them to learn new communication skills or whatever. I would have to say, because 65 to 90% of what we do is unconscious. What we do and what we say is just unconscious behavior, right? So there's the knowledge side of things, but then there's our own habits and norms that we provide and we do right in front of other people. But as I've gone through time and become more experienced in my role, I become a stronger facilitator. My scores are going up. I'm more authentic. I'm sharing stories about what happened. So for me, I would say that sometimes these older workers, they have their ingrained habits. They know what they're doing, and therefore they perform better than possibly somebody who's younger, even though the younger people might have more expertise or energy, not expertise, but more education, more energy. It's us at our age where we can be very grounded in our role as well and know ourselves, which makes us more real and authentic with others. And it's easier to do our job, and people trust us more because we have that credibility, we have that expertise, we have that air of confidence about us that we know what we're talking about. So we're not hiding anything. So, but yeah, you're okay.
But you've also kept up with the latest knowledge. Like, I know you're a very book smart person. You read a lot of books and you're always reading something about
that's true,
or growth or learning and improvement. Right. So that's what I'm saying is I think oftentimes as we get older, we start forgetting about learning new knowledge. We become ingrained in our ways, and we have a lot of lived experience. But the best thing we can do as older workers or people now is to try to learn some of the newer knowledge, right? Like, because things change over time exponentially. Like I said, it's been growing and it's been becoming quicker, faster and faster, where knowledge is just constantly coming to us. We're inundated with it, or over inundated with it. So much so, think about this. When we were kids growing up, the speed of knowledge was slow. How did we retain knowledge? We read books. We would go out to the library and get books and read encyclopedias and things like that. That's how we learn knowledge. Imagine trying to learn everything there is to know now and memorizing it to try to study for a test and pass an exam. It'd be impossible, right? I guess what I'm saying is knowledge is growing so quickly and there's so much of it now. There's no way we can retain all this knowledge. That's why we have computers now. That's why children, they don't pass or fail anymore in schools, because ask kids nowadays what the capital of Canada is, or the capital of a province, or whatever it might be. A lot of them wouldn't know. They wouldn't know, but they'll know where to find that knowledge. And that's the only thing that matters nowadays, is because there's so much knowledge out there that I think it's becoming impossible for everyone to retain it, right? And so it's more about teaching our children, because we no longer need to retain the knowledge, about how do you access knowledge, and more importantly, how do you verify that knowledge is correct, is factual, is based on sound research and science and everything else, right? And that's also become very tricky, because we also know there's a lot of false and misinformation out there on the internet. In fact, half of it is.
Yeah, and in respect to knowledge retention, we had to go to the library, we had to do research and do these different things, but it didn't mean that I retained the knowledge. Like, I went through all the classes, like history and all these different things, and mathematics and stuff like that. I didn't necessarily retain the knowledge. My brother, on the other hand, could retain everything. And there's people out there, it's amazing what they have in their head. But I think there's also a shift that is coming up in our society that we need to be aware of. And that is that it might be easier for younger people to retain certain knowledge, because social media and other mediums caters to their desire to learn about something specific. So if I'm passionate about cars, as an example, my YouTube feed is going to give me everything on cars. where then I start distracting. I think that's one of the problems in the education system now as well, is how do you become more interesting than as a teacher than the phone? Because the phone is actually catered to what you want in your life and what's important to you. So I think maybe people are becoming more specialists in certain areas. They have that access to the outside world and what's going on. But like you're mentioning, teaching kids that to be a critical thinker, you're going to have to look at these different things. And I guess that's how we can step in as older workers as well and provide that legacy and that information to others around, yeah, you know that, but think about this and this and this, what's going on elsewhere in the world. And how does that all tie in together? And that's where we can really I think that's where we can step into our power as older workers.
Well, and I think our workforce, because of that, has changed, right? Like, 100 years ago or whatever, we just didn't have the same amount of people on this planet. So we had to know a bit about everything, right? Mm-hmm. We had to be more of a generalist, if you will. But nowadays, because there's just so many more people and there's so much more knowledge, as you said, we've become more specialized. And so people have glommed onto this, like whether it's cars or some other interest, they'll just read everything about cars because everything's brought to them about cars. It's a cycle, right? So because we're interested in cars, the internet and all the Google and everything else and YouTube and all those social media channels and whatnot, that's the content we constantly get. So we become specialized and learn more and more about that topic we're interested in the most. Even my son always says, why do I need to, like when he he's homeschooled now, but when he used to go to school, he would say, why do I need to know this? Why do I need to learn this? Mm-hmm. I couldn't give him an answer. I truthfully couldn't, because at the end of the day, does it matter if he knows what the capital of England is or whatever it might be? Like, it's not necessarily relevant to his life, and and if he wants to know that, he can just look it up on the internet. So it's like, it is hard to really expect kids to learn the way we used to learn, because just because of how knowledge is stored, but also how we access knowledge, as well as just the amount of knowledge out there. And how much content and knowledge is growing these days at exponential rates that are beyond the speed that we used to grow knowledge. Because if you think about how we used to accumulate knowledge, we would have to do the experiment or whatever it is, mm-hmm. and then we'd have to write about it, and then we'd have to, like, knowledge isn't disseminated as quickly, and it's not accessed and stored as easily, right? So as it is nowadays, you just, like, you want to know something, bang, YouTube it. I didn't know how to do the grout in my shower, and all I had to do was look it up, and bang, it was there. And I'm an expert. I could do my grout in the shower, right? It's things like that we never used to have access to, all of this knowledge that people can become experts in specialized areas, right? We don't really need to go to school anymore, in a way. If you think about it, we could learn everything if we wanted to that we need to know about life on the internet nowadays. There's nothing we couldn't learn on the internet. If we wanted to learn math, we could go to the internet. We don't need to go to school. If we want to learn how to read, we could go to the internet. We don't need to go to school. We can learn a language on the internet. There's pretty much everything and anything on the internet we can learn. We don't need to go to school anymore. I think schools are going to go through a huge transition over the next 50 years.
I disagree. When I think about one thing that's missing about internet education is what?
Oh, the social connection.
Yeah, the social connection, right? And
that's the only reason we go to have kids go to school now, really, is the social connection.
And learning through others and being able to dialogue and share opinions and insights.
Yeah, but that's the human component of it. But they don't go for knowledge anymore, because they learn more on the internet than they do at school.
And they learn more about what's of interest to them, not what's of interest to me, telling you that you need to learn about this in order to be successful in your life.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that might feed into the attitude shift as well. It's totally. Why the hell do I need to know this? But you're right. Yeah. Like, you and I we're generalists in a way, but I think that also is based on our personality types. ENFPs tend to be, we have the type of brain that's wandering all over the place. We don't like to finish things. We like to try new things. We get bored easily, things like that. So as a result, you and I have had many highs and lows in our life as we try different things and we take different risks, but not everybody's like that. I did just want to share one story. One story here is what I always find funny is I'm I know a lot of different things. I know how to fix a lot of different things and stuff like that. But I ride a motorbike, and when I go on a ferry, as an example, there's a bunch of motorbikes there. People will look at each other's motorbikes and say, "Oh yeah, I have a Kawasaki, blah blah blah," and they'll say, "Oh yeah, okay, Glenn, this bike here, blah 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 blah," and I have this and this, and they'll tell me what the bikes are. I have no idea what they're talking about, but I'm like, okay. Because it's like, I don't know, I don't care about the different models out there, but these people are super passionate about one thing. But also, I just want to say, based on my personality type, I can understand why I'm not interested in that, because I don't want to be in-depth knowledge about one topic other than self-awareness for me, because it's boring.
Right.
I want to go to the next best exciting thing out there. Sorry, you were going to say, Jeff.
Yeah, no, I hear you, dude. Like, I'm the same way with like mountain bikes. I would go out mountain biking with some buddies and stuff, and they'd be all talking about the mechanics of it and the geometry and all that stuff. And I'd be like, okay,
I'm just here to have fun.
I'm just here to ride. Exactly. Like, I don't really care about all that stuff. If something breaks down, I take it to the bike shop and get the mechanic to fix it. I don't have any. I just want to ride my bike.
Yeah.
So, I'm the same way. And it's funny you say we get bored easily. Just last night, I texted my buddies back east, and I said, I'm bored. I said, do you want to go somewhere next weekend? Let's meet in the middle. Let's fly to Regina. Like,
Regina of all places. Go to Saskatoon. It's much nicer than Regina.
Well, wherever. I don't really care. I was just bored. I'm like, I want to do something fun and new and exciting. And it was just, we get bored easily because we want new experiences and always gravitate towards that in our life. I know that's definitely a trait of mine for sure.
Yeah, and not wanting to finish things. I love starting things and I don't always want to finish it. So your psychologist, So just back to this topic of we only have so much time. So we're over the hill now, and we are working off a limited number of years, and who knows when that's going to end. So we have that insight now that we start seeing our friends. Some of them pass away, and we notice the aging in our body, and we do less. Mind you, there's people out there that I know that are doing more at over the age of 50 than they've ever done before. I'm definitely an example of that. I'm doing more than I've ever done before. And maybe that's clinging on to life and trying to increase my longevity and try to be healthy and stuff like that. But what else did your psychologist tell you about this?
Now, ask yourself this: do you really want to be, how old do you want to live to?
My goal is 103.
Okay. See, I used to think that.
But I've also told my wife, I said, if I die tomorrow, I'm going to have no regrets other than not having a connection with my son, because and I think you've done the same thing. I have lived my life. I have done what I wanted to do. I've taken the risks. I haven't said no to things. I'm more of a yes, let's do it. Like moving to Vancouver Island was a classic example of that. So even the traveling that we do and the relationship I have with her, my life's good. Yeah. And so I have no regrets. But
why did you pick 103? I'm curious about that number. Is there a reason?
There's a book I read a while ago about live till you're 103.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, 103. Well, I used to say I wanted to live to be 150, and now I'm not so sure. I like 90. I think 90 would be a good age. Like if I could just die on my 90th birthday, that'd be perfect. But at the end of the day, you and I are both healthy. I mean, we've taken care of ourselves. I think emotionally, spiritually, in many ways, we've taken care of ourselves. We've done the work. We've tried to maintain good social connections, things like that. So we have, decent incomes, education, all of those things. All of those traits and qualities and determinants are there to get us there, right? We just have to maintain it at this point. We're not trying to figure that out anymore. We're kind of at that place in our lives where we know what we need to take care of ourselves, right? As long as we continue doing that, we'll probably make it to a nice ripe old age, right? So for me, I mean, I look at what's going on in the world. I'm like, I don't think I want to live to be 150 anymore, given the state of our planet and whatnot. And I think I don't want to be around for all of that. I'd rather be spread across the mountains or whatever by that point, hopefully, or thrown in the ocean. I don't really care what they do with me, but I feel like this is a time in my life, and I don't know if you're experiencing this, that I'm no longer interested in a job. It doesn't interest me whatsoever. I have no, money is not the main motivator in my life anymore. Um, I'm not saying I'm rich. I'm not saying if I could retire now and live to be 90 and not have to worry about money again. But in my 20s and 30s, because I was trying to grow and build wealth, that was my main driver in my career. I would
Mm-hmm.
often try to find new jobs that made me more money. And now I don't see it that way anymore. I very much more look at what do I want to do with the time I have left here? Because the time is the most valuable resource to us now. It's not money
Definitely,
anymore.
yeah.
It used to be money because we had all the time in the world. When we're in our 20s, we're not thinking about death. We're like living it up, partying, having fun, doing all these crazy things, right? Even into our 30s, probably me in my 40s, even, but that's another story.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at all of a sudden we're seeing time as a resource, which we never used to before. At least I never did. And so that's become more important to me than money. Money is not important. Money is still important. It's a factor, but
Mm-hmm.
time is more important now because it's a far more limited resource now than it used to be. And so as I've gotten older in my 50s, especially, I notice it shifted after 50. And now I'm really looking at what do I do with my time because I have a lot less time left than in front of me than I do behind me. And I want to find something that's meaningful for me. And I think this is about leaving a legacy. What do I leave behind? Right?
Mm-hmm.
How do I contribute to a world to make it hopefully a better place? How do I support other people to help them with their lives? Because at the end of the day, we can't die with all our money, right? We're not going to
No.
get buried with all our money, but we're going to leave behind people. We're going to leave an impact on people, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's all we can leave behind. So, how do we use the time we have to leave an impact on people that's meaningful? Be it your children, I have two sons, be it your community, your neighborhood, the globe, politics, whatever it is. What's the impact we want to leave? Because that's how we leave our legacy. And I remember in university going through sociology. Was it Emile Durkheim? I think it was Emile Durkheim, famous sociologist. He used to say that the greatest human fear. What do you think the greatest human fear is?
Well, for me, it's death.
Right. Well, death is final for sure. It's the greatest human fear is that we never existed, right? So after we're dead, how do we know we ever existed, right? Is so it's existential, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how we overcome that fear is we have children because we leave our children
Oh, good
behind,
point. Yeah.
right? So
Mm.
that shows proof that we existed. It's also leaving a legacy, and so people do that through like creating a charitable foundation perhaps, or whatever it might be, so that our ideas or our consciousness lived beyond us, right? It got passed down into future generations. Now,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, we can have children and there's the physical proof, but how do we know we exist if we also don't leave behind our what's important to us and our values, right? And how do we pass that on to younger generations? And I think in some ways we've forgotten that because I think in the last, especially 50 years, because computers and technology and everything, youth and knowledge has become so much more valuable than wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to get back to that wisdom again and start listening to our elders again. Just like in First Nations communities, elders are revered and respected because they have all that wisdom. And I feel like that's what's been missing in our culture. And I think it's time we really honor that more now because our elders do have so much life experience and wisdom that we can learn from, and values too, because it keeps us connected to those values and our roots. And I think in some ways, our society, in some ways, has lost its way. We become disconnected for our roots. That's why there's so many more mental health issues and unhappiness, I think, than ever before. And that wasn't just a result of the pandemic. I think it's a result of our post-technological age, and that social isolation a lot of people are experiencing. So I guess what I'm saying is what's more important to me now is, how do I leave an impact on this world? And that starts with my relationship with myself first and foremost.
Yes, for sure.
How I want to show up in the world and who I am. It starts with my relationships with, my wife, with my children, with my family, with my friends, with my community, and then it just keeps going out, right? And so, obviously, as an individual, the greatest impact we can have is within our own nuclear families.
Mm-hmm.
But we can still have an impact on the world too. It's just not going to. You're not going to see the results of that impact. It's not going to be as apparent because you and I are big recyclers, or we're we try to live a more green life, if you will, than maybe the average person. Like I'm a 1-car family, right? Mm-hmm. And I barely use the car. So, but that small action is leaving an impact on the planet, even though I'm still, not 100%, I'm still producing fossil, or, burning emissions and stuff, but I've reduced my impact, and that has an impact on the planet. And that also shows who I am as a person in terms of my values. Right. So I think it's, so those ways, we can still impact things globally, but we don't necessarily see the net result because it's such a small impact. Because as the circle grows, we have less of an impact. Whereas my relationship with my son, and how I nurture that's going to have, I think, a more significant impact on him as an individual in growing up and becoming a man than I could ever have on the world, right? And I think we need to get back to that almost. I think in some ways, families also have become disconnected because we spend so much time on our screens and whatnot, right? So how do we nurture those relationships? How do I pass down my values to my children and share those values with my community? And how do I show up in that way so that I can give back and be involved in more meaningful activities? So again, and I will admit, it's a bit selfish. How do I leave my legacy? How do I show that I ever existed? Because those values that I pass down will get also potentially passed down to future generations through my children and through the society, right?
Yeah, well, it's like you're an educator in a way. If you think about elders in First Nations communities where they share stories about the history, so kids learn and they can adapt and figure things out and feel empowered. When one is young, you're committing your life to work, to a job, to working for an organization and being successful to make money. So I guess when you hit our age and you're closer to retirement or retired, that is a time where you may think you have less time, but now you have more time to do what you want to do, right? Not everybody's in a job that they want to do. They just do the job because they need to make the money. I think I've been very fortunate in my work where I'm doing the job that I want to do. So it's fulfilling. But now I have a chance to really understand my values, what I want to leave in this world, and take the time that I have left to do that. So it becomes a focus more on me and what I can leave versus focusing on, I'm working for this organization, I need to do what's important to them. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. Because it's important to you, and the money isn't the main driver anymore, right? It's because, look, we all know we can make money. We've done it for the last 30, 40 years. That's a given. And also we've accumulated wealth, and we need less things because we consume less things. We don't need as much as we get older. We've already got our house, we've already got our cars, things like that. We have all the things that younger people want and are growing their wealth to accumulate. We've got all that. If anything, we start downsizing. So many people, they move from their house into smaller townhouses or condos or apartments or whatever, because we don't need these big houses when we're empty nesters, right? We don't have children anymore, all that. We don't need all this stuff. I remember before I had children, how little I used to live with. Well, we end up getting back to that place because we realize we don't need all this stuff, and we don't need to maintain it anymore because we're not raising our families anymore, right? So we naturally just need less as we get older, in terms of, material stuff, obviously. But also in terms of well, the money is material. So in terms of money, because we can live on less because we have the things we need to survive, and we have the things we need to enjoy our lives. We've bought our bikes, we've bought our kayaks, or whatever it is we might be into, and we have that stuff already. So yeah, I know what you're saying,
Jeff. I think this episode's been great so far because it's really offered some context to our listeners in terms of what you can anticipate you're going to get out of the Brain Scrub now is dialogue of from two grown men who are still growing in their life and entering a new phase in their life, and to learn from what we've been through. And I can say for me and for Jeff as well, we're very open books on these types of things. And Jeff, I just want to thank you for accepting to be a co-host on the show. I'm so excited in working with you and the next episode. And we'll talk more about what the next steps are in terms of our episodes and stuff like that. But I just, I'm so grateful to have you here, Jeff.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I don't know where this journey is going to take us, but I think it's going to be exciting and interesting. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of laughs and funny stories that'll come up as we're talking. And it's nice because in a way, as I was saying earlier, this is perhaps one way we are leaving a legacy.
Exactly. Right? Yeah.
We're sharing ourselves. We're open, authentic, raw. We're not hiding anything. We're bringing up stories from our past. We're bringing up stories from our present. And I think that's important for people to hear, because one day we all get here and we want to be able to relate to other people. That's what makes us human. And the more I think, especially men can do this, I think it'll help younger generations grow up and learn and understand what it is to be a man and all the things that can happen in a man's life.
Yeah,
man's that can shape who they are and who they become. And if there's some wisdom in it that can be passed down, great, But I think at the end of the day, what's the most important thing is that whatever we're saying here could potentially help a man.
Yeah, we learn from each other's stories, right? Just like what you were sharing earlier. You went to Ontario, you hooked up with your friends, you're sharing stories, you're hearing their stories, and you came back a different person and had different perspectives. It's so important. So I like to think that we're kind of role modeling that as well. I just want to leave with that.
On your back, it's so good.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Say we're so good. We're role modeling.
I want to acknowledge you, Jeff, Jeff, you're not just a friend. You are somebody who calls me out of my shit. And having friends like that is so valuable, because sometimes I'm stuck somewhere and I'll call Jeff and I'll say, what should I do? And then he'll say, well, Glenn, what about this? What about that? Or he'll call me out of my inner child work that I have yet to work on, or how this might connect. And having friends like you is so important. So
yeah, I agree. And
yeah,
the feeling's mutual. I mean, I know we've talked a lot in the last year, especially. I've been going through my own struggles, and having you has been such an important part of my life, because I don't have that with a lot of other men in my life, very few, and especially because men just seem busy. I don't know about you, if you've noticed this, but I barely talk to anybody nowadays because everybody just seems so distracted, and it's almost like connecting with another individual is more uncomfortable now and unnatural. You know what I'm saying?
We should have more time, yet it's the men out there seem to have less time to actually talk about stuff. What's up with that? But that's a whole other episode.
That's a whole other thing. But like I said, and even when you do, it's like sometimes this uncomfortableness around it, because we become so disconnected because we're so fascinated about what's on the screens and stuff, that it's become we've just become disconnected from our humanness almost, and what makes us human, and feel that connection. And I think that connection is what we have to nurture. It's sacred. And I think if we don't really focus on nurturing it and do something about it, we do become disconnected and disassociated. And that's what I was experiencing over the last year or so. I was just becoming so disconnected from almost like my body. It's felt like I felt like I was feeling nothing. And then when I had this epiphany, when I went back to Ontario, and it was the first time in a long time that I had 20 years anyways, that I had spent any amount of time with some of these really dear friends that I grew up with. And it helped remind me of who I was. And it felt so natural to be there. And we were just, my friend and I, we were working at his cottage, and we were just spending time together doing things at his cottage. We put in their docks. We cleaned up the yard, and we're doing things together and talking as men do, right?
Yeah.
And it just felt so natural and right. I was like, this is what I've been missing. I don't have that here where I live, and this is what I've been missing. And it's so important to have that connection with another person in real life, right? and I think we have to really hold on to that as a species. Otherwise, I don't know what the future holds, honestly, because I remember years ago, I was in Vancouver and I saw this. It was like almost like a glimpse into our future. And this was probably 20 years ago. And I thought it was quite insightful. And interestingly, it was a high school play. And I went to it, and it was all about it was based on a futuristic society where people lived in these pods by themselves in their little pods, and they worked. Everybody worked online, and that's how they made a living. Everybody did this, but then all of a sudden, the technology failed, and all the computer, internet, everything went down, and then it was the rest of the play was about how the barriers came down physically speaking, as well as metaphorically, and how awkward it was for human beings to actually interact with each other again in real life. And I'm like, when I look back at that play, I'm like, oh my God, that was so insightful for 20 years ago, right? Because we're still kind of, in the infancy of this technological boom. And I'm seeing that now, and I'm like, wow, whoever wrote that play was very insightful and almost a prophet, I would say, because I'm almost seeing that now, because I'm seeing it in my own family, but in society at large, where people, especially children nowadays, are spending such an inordinate amount of time online in front of the screen by themselves in their room for hours and hours on end and not connecting with the real world. And I'm like, is that where we're heading? Because if so, then I think the world is going to be a very dangerous place to live in, and one of disconnection. And I think more and more nowadays, what we need to focus on is our social connection, because that's the thing that's going to keep us together. And to keep, I think that the more disconnected we become, because you can see how people treat each other online, we don't treat each other that way in person. No. And I think that's the problem nowadays is we're so disconnected that we're not treating each other the way we normally would if we were actually together. And that's becoming more the norm than not. And I think that's unfortunate, because so much is missing that we need from those in-person social interactions that we're not getting.
The whole emotional connection and stuff. And with AI, how people have AI friends out there. And now they're even saying that they're at a point where AI is now getting to a place where it can start managing itself. What's going to happen then? They're able to manipulate so many people out there because we have AI friends. What is it going to create in our society? I don't even like to really think about that, but I think it's something that the governments need to investigate for sure. Absolutely. So we don't lose what we have, like you and I on this podcast today, right? We're two human beings speaking, not from an artificial intelligence perspective, but from a human connection. And we can't
exactly. Yeah. And especially for our children and younger generations, because think about it, they're growing up with that.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. You and I grew up in a different time and era where we had a lot more in real life. Well, because we had to, because there was no alternative. We grew up with in real life personal connections. Mm-hmm. So we know what that feels like. And this generation doesn't. They just don't.
No.
So what's going to be like in 50 years? So that's why I think we have to make more of an effort to create those opportunities, to create social connection, especially for younger generations who don't know how to do it. They struggle with it. That's why there's so many mental health issues in younger, like teenagers and stuff nowadays. Anxiety, depression, you name it. It's just keeps going up and up because they don't have that connection we did.
Yeah.
When we were growing up in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah. Wow. Jeff, thanks a lot to our listeners. Yeah. I guess we should say this together because I always say it alone. Is thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
No, we have to do it together. Okay, hold on. Okay. No. You have to say it slower. Okay.
Slower.
Okay. Yeah. Just say it in that. Thanks for listening. Okay. Ready? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Thanks for listening.